Nestled deep in a valley surrounded by rolling green hills and fields of golden wheat was a village called Thistleberry Lane. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone's name, where the chimneys always smoked with the smell of homemade bread, and children's laughter echoed through cobblestone alleys. In the heart of this village stood a small cottage with ivy-covered walls and a blue door worn by time. The garden surrounding it bloomed in all seasons: roses in spring, sunflowers in summer, chrysanthemums in autumn, and snowdrops in winter. No matter the month, there was always something alive, something hopeful. This cottage belonged to an old woman named Elena, but no one called her that anymore. To the villagers, she was simply the Golden Grandmother. She earned the nickname for two reasons. First, her hair, though completely gray, shimmered in the sunlight like strands of gold. Second, her heart, ever giving, ever wise, radiated warmth so deeply it could melt even the coldest spirit. No one ever left her home without feeling a little more whole, a little more seen. She was small and thin, her back slightly bent with age, yet her eyes sparkled with light. Children ran to her not just for the cookies she baked but for the stories she told, stories of courage, kindness, and quiet triumphs. Some said she had magic. Others said she had secrets. But what made her special wasn't spells or riches, it was her strength, the kind that comes from enduring life and choosing love anyway. On a quiet autumn morning, with fog still hanging low and golden leaves crunching underfoot, Elena sat by her window knitting a scarf for her youngest grandchild, Lily. A kettle whistled on the stove. The ticking of the clock and the chirping of birds were the only sounds. Just then, there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find a young boy standing shyly on the porch. His name was Noah, one of the village children, no older than 10. He held a crumpled piece of paper in his hand. I drew this for you," he mumbled. She bent down, smiling. "For me?" he nodded. "Because you're the nicest person I know." Her eyes misted as she took the drawing, a sketch of her cottage with sunbeams pouring out of the windows. "Would you like to come in for warm bread?" she asked. Noah's face lit up. "Yes, please." And just like that, the day began as many did in her home, with a child's laughter, the smell of bread, and stories passed between generations. The cottage was warm and welcoming, filled with the scent of freshly baked bread and cinnamon. Sunlight filtered through lace curtains, casting soft patterns on the wooden floor. Noah sat at the small round kitchen table, legs swinging beneath his chair, while the Golden Grandmother placed 2 thick slices of bread on a plate and drizzled honey over them. "You made this yourself?" he asked, eyes wide as he took a bite. She chuckled. "Every morning since I was your age, dear. My grandmother taught me." Her hands were like bark, and her hug smelled of rosewater and old flour. He grinned. "I wish my grandma lived here." "You're always welcome in this house," she said, ruffling his hair. "What brings you today, besides your wonderful drawing?" Noah looked down at his half-eaten bread. "I heard my mum and dad talking last night. They said we might have to move. Dad can't find work. I don't want to go. I love it here." The Golden Grandmother paused. Her heart, though long used to carrying the burdens of others, felt the ache of the boy's words. "It's hard when the world starts changing faster than we're ready for," she said softly. He looked up. "How do you stop it?" "You don't," she said, handing him a warm cup of tea. "But you can learn how to grow strong roots, so that even if the wind pulls you, you won't fall. You'll bend, then rise again." Noah frowned. "I don't think I'm strong." She smiled. "Then let me tell you a story. Years ago, many, many years before Noah was born, Elena was a young girl in this very village. Her family had a small farm and very little money. One year, the rain never came. The crops dried. The cows gave no milk. Her father looked out at the barren fields with tired eyes and said, "We must leave. There's nothing left for us here." But little Elena didn't want to go. She loved the willow trees and the hills that sang with birdsong. The night before they were meant to leave, she snuck out to the edge of the forest with a satchel of seeds. She dug into the hard earth with her bare hands, crying all the while, planting hope when there was none. "I'll come back," she whispered. "And when I do, this place will bloom." She and her family left the next morning. Years passed. Hard years. Her family struggled in the city, her father taking jobs that wore down his bones. But Elena never forgot. She studied. She saved. And the day she could return, she did, alone, but with determination burning in her heart. When she reached the edge of the forest, something strange had happened. Tiny green shoots had sprung up where she once dug. The seeds, forgotten by everyone but her, had taken root. I was only a girl, she said now to Noah. But I planted hope anyway. And it waited for me. Noah's eyes were wide. And that's how your garden started. She nodded. That's how everything started. Noah finished his bread in silence, eyes thoughtful. He folded the drawing he had given her and took it back. I'm going to give this to my mum, he said. So she remembers this place. So maybe we can stay. Or, come back someday, like you did. The golden grandmother hugged him tightly. You're already stronger than you think, Noah. You have golden roots now. As he ran down the hill toward home, she stood by the window, her fingers brushing the lace curtain, and whispered, one seed is enough to grow a forest. The days in Thistleberry Lane moved with the rhythm of nature, gentle, patient, and full of quiet wonders. Rain didn't just fall, it sang on rooftops. Leaves didn't just tumble, they danced. In the center of it all was the golden grandmother's cottage, wrapped in climbing vines and encircled by a garden that many believed could only grow under magic hands. But Elena never claimed to be a magician. She simply knew the power of care. Each morning, before the village stirred, she walked the garden paths with a woven basket over one arm and soft words on her lips. She spoke to every plant, greeting them like old friends. Good morning, Rose. Look at your petals today, blushing like a bride. Sunflower, you've outstretched your arms again. Are you trying to hug the sky? She tended each bloom like a memory, each herb like a promise. The garden, in return, grew brighter, fuller, and more alive with every season. It wasn't just a place for vegetables or flowers, it was a living canvas of color, love, and stories. Elena had 3 grandchildren. Lily, the youngest at 7, with eyes full of wonder, Matteo, 11, quiet and thoughtful, and Rosa, 14, who carried her mother's fiery spirit and her father's strength. They visited often, sometimes for weekends, sometimes for weeks in the summer. To them, their grandmother was more than just a relative. She was an anchor in a noisy world, a keeper of old tales and fresh cookies, a protector of secrets, and a quiet warrior of love. One afternoon, as golden light spilled across the garden, the 3 grandchildren knelt with their grandmother in the soil, helping her plant tulip bulbs. Grandma, Matteo asked, wiping his dirt-covered hands on his jeans, why do you talk to the plants? Elena smiled without looking up. Because everything living wants to be seen. Just like you, my darling. But they can't talk back, Lily said, poking at a worm. Ah, but they do, Elena replied, brushing her hands clean. Not in words, but in blossoms, in how they reach toward the sun, how they survive the frost. They speak with their living. Rosa, sitting apart from the others, scoffed lightly. It's just plants, Grandma. Elena gave her a warm look. Once upon a time, someone said that about me, too. Later that night, when the children had fallen asleep on soft quilts in the loft, Elena stood in the garden alone. Moonlight poured like silver over the petals. She knelt by a patch of soil where nothing had grown. This small square of earth had been barren for years. No flower took root there. Not even weeds. She called it the bitter patch. Every garden had one, she believed, not always of soil, but of spirit. A place where something had hurt too deeply, and life was too afraid to return. She touched the dirt gently, as one might touch a scar. This too will grow, she whispered. One day, a soft wind rustled the trees. And for the briefest moment, she felt the past stir, memories of a storm, of loss, of a time when she'd nearly given up. But not tonight. Tonight, she stood and walked back to the cottage, where her grandchildren dreamed beneath patchwork quilts, and the stars shone like lanterns in the sky. The next morning began with the scent of apple porridge and rosemary tea. Rain pattered softly against the windows, and the old cottage glowed with the warmth of wood fire and love. Lily giggled as she helped stir the pot. Matteo sat cross-legged with a book, and Rosa scrolled through her phone with a sigh. Why do we even have to stay here, anyway? Rosa mumbled. There's no signal, no friends, and no Wi-Fi. Elena placed a steaming bowl of porridge in front of her. Because sometimes your heart needs more signal than your phone. Rosa rolled her eyes, but a small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. Matteo looked up. Grandma, what happened in that empty patch in the garden? The room grew quieter. Even Lily stopped stirring. Elena wiped her hands on her apron and sat down. That, my loves, is a story I've not told in many years. She reached for the sugar pot, added a pinch to her tea, and looked out the rain-covered window. You've seen how I love this garden, how much joy it brings me. But once, long ago, this garden was my grief. The children leaned in. When I first returned to Thistleberry Lane, Elena began, I didn't come with laughter or flowers. I came with tears. She paused. I had just lost someone I loved very much, your grandfather. The room was still. We were young when we met. He was strong, full of ideas, always dreaming. I was more quiet, more grounded. But together, we were balance. He built this cottage with his own hands. We planted that cherry tree out front the week after we moved in. We danced under its blossoms every spring. Her voice grew softer. But one winter, he fell ill. Quickly, quietly, and just like that, he was gone. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Matteo looked down at his hands. Even Rosa lowered her phone. I couldn't breathe in the house without hearing his voice. I couldn't walk the hills without feeling his absence. I couldn't smile without guilt. So I planted a garden, she said, her eyes far away now. Not for joy, but because I didn't know what else to do with my pain. I dug, and dug, and dug. I cried into the earth. I buried memories like seeds. And one day, when spring returned, the first crocus bloomed. The bitter patch, Matteo whispered. Is that where you buried him? She nodded slowly. It's where I sat every night. It's where I told him I missed him. But no flower would grow there. I think even the earth respected my sorrow. There was silence. But it's okay, she said with a deep breath. Not everything needs to bloom right away. Some parts of us take longer to heal. She looked at each of them, her eyes shining. You don't have to force growth. You just have to make room for it. Later that afternoon, Rosa walked out into the garden alone. She found the bitter patch. It was just a square of earth, nothing remarkable. But somehow, now she saw it differently. It wasn't dead. It was waiting. She knelt, pressed her palm to the soil, and closed her eyes. I know how that feels, she whispered. Waiting to grow again. The next few days brought soft winds and steady sunlight, a perfect balance for the garden to stretch, grow, and bloom. The village of Thistleberry Lane, with its quiet hum of daily life, felt like a world apart, a place that moved slower but deeper. Rosa stayed behind one morning while Lily and Matteo went to the nearby stream with their grandmother to collect wild mint. She said she had homework, but really, she just wanted to be alone. She wandered into the garden and found herself standing once again by the bitter patch. No plants, no color, just earth. Still, she sat, and for the first time in a long time, she let her guard down. Rosa wasn't just sulking about phones or boredom. She had come to her grandmother's house with a heart full of confusion. At school, she felt like she never fit in. Her friends had drifted away. Her father was always working. Her mother was always tired. And she was just angry. Not at anyone in particular, just everything. But here, in this small square of unbloomed earth, Rosa felt strangely seen. I don't know who I'm supposed to be, she whispered, running her fingers through the dirt. Everyone expects me to be strong, smart, nice, polite. But I don't even know what I want. A breeze moved gently through the garden, lifting her hair. She looked around at the rows of tulips, the stretching sunflowers, the smiling daisies. And then her gaze returned to the bitter patch. What if I'm like this? She said. What if I'm the part that never grows? Behind her, a voice answered. Then maybe you're just the part that hasn't been loved enough yet. It was her grandmother. Rosa turned quickly, embarrassed, but Elena only smiled as she sat down beside her. I've seen you coming out here, Elena said softly. You talk to the ground the way I talk to flowers. That means there's a gardener in you, Rosa. Rosa shook her head. I don't think anything's growing in me. Elena reached into her pocket and pulled out a tiny seed. She placed it in Rosa's hand. Then let's plant something together. One thing. Right here. Just between us. Rosa stared at the seed. What kind is it? A surprise, Elena said with a wink. They dug a small hole in the center of the bitter patch and placed the seed inside. They covered it gently, like tucking in a baby, then watered it from the copper watering can. And then, they waited. That night, Rosa wrote in her journal for the first time in months. Greater than I planted a seed today. I don't know what it is, but somehow I feel like it's me. Maybe this is what growing up means. Maybe it's slow, and quiet, and a little scary. Maybe healing doesn't look like fireworks. Maybe it looks like dirt and water and hope. The next morning, Rosa rushed outside before anyone else had woken. There was nothing yet, just wet earth. But she smiled anyway, because for the first time in a long time, something inside her felt ready. Ready to begin again. The air in Thistleberry Lane turned sweeter as summer deepened. Bees hummed lazily in the lavender. Birds sang in the cherry trees. The garden bloomed more than ever, as if it, too, could sense something new was beginning. One afternoon, as the sun bathed the hills in golden light, a soft bell rang through the village square. It was the old iron bell above the town's community hall. People only rang it when something truly special was about to happen. That day, it was Elena who had asked for it. Flyers soon appeared on doorposts and bakery windows. Greater than herb, you are invited. Herb, to the first gathering of gratitude. Hosted in the garden of Elena, the golden grandmother. Come share stories, memories, and blessings. Music, food, flowers, friendship. This Sunday at sunset. The children helped with everything, baking, decorating, and preparing the garden to welcome the village. Mateo built small wooden benches from old crates. Lily tied ribbons to the willow branches. Rosa painted signs that read, "Plant kindness," and "Let love bloom." Each corner of the garden was alive with purpose. Thistleberry Lane was beautiful, but it wasn't without pain. There were villagers who had lost loved ones. Farmers who struggled through dry years. Parents who worked 3 jobs and still worried about bills. Teenagers who felt like Rosa, uncertain, unseen, or misunderstood. Elena knew this. That was why she planned the gathering. People needed more than advice. They needed connection. And gardens, she often said, were made for more than flowers. They were made for healing. As the sun began to set, villagers arrived in small groups, carrying dishes wrapped in cloth, jars of wild jam, and musical instruments. Laughter mingled with the scent of rosemary bread. Children played tag among the marigolds. Elders sat beneath the cherry tree, telling stories of the way it used to be. At the center of it all stood Elena, her silver hair glowing like a halo in the twilight. Her smile welcomed everyone, from the lonely to the proud, from the young to the quiet-hearted. Noah came with his parents, his drawing tucked under his arm. He gave it back to Elena, this time with new color added. "I told my parents what you said," he said proudly. "We're going to try and stay. Or come back if we go." Elena embraced him tightly. "Your roots will guide you. Wherever you go." Then Rosa stepped forward. She wore a yellow ribbon in her hair, the same color as the tulip she and her grandmother had planted weeks before. The tulip had bloomed that morning. She stood in front of the villagers, her voice a little shaky. "I used to think I had to be perfect to be loved. Or to matter. But I think maybe we just have to be real." Her eyes found Elena's. "My grandmother taught me that. She showed me that things grow when you care for them. Even broken things. Even bitter things. Even people." The crowd was silent for a moment. Then applause erupted, gentle, warm, and full of meaning. Elena stepped beside her granddaughter and whispered, "I'm so proud of you, Rosa. You've bloomed." Rosa whispered back, "Because you planted me." That night, the garden shimmered under lantern light. Music filled the air. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years laughed together. Tears were shared. So was joy. The village had not changed. But it had softened. And sometimes, that was the first miracle. Elena watched it all, standing by the garden gate. In her heart, she felt the roots of every soul around her stretching downward, anchoring into something deeper. Something golden. After the gathering of gratitude, something subtle but powerful began to take root in Thistleberry Lane. People started stopping by the garden, not just to admire the flowers but to talk. To cry. To laugh. To sit in silence. Elena had become more than just the golden grandmother. She was the keeper of the heart. And her garden was no longer only hers, it belonged to the village. Each person who walked its winding paths found something they didn't know they needed. One afternoon, a young boy named Finn came by with a broken watch in his hand. "My dad gave it to me before he left," he said, holding back tears. "But now it's stopped working." Elena gently took the watch and examined it under the sunlight. "Some things stop working because they've been wound too tight," she said. She placed the watch beside a blooming daisy and added, "Sometimes, what's broken just needs rest." Finn frowned. "Will it ever tick again?" She smiled. "Maybe. But even if it doesn't, it still holds time, your time. That memory. No crack can take that away." Finn sat quietly beside her for a long while. He didn't ask for the watch back. He just watched the flowers sway. Another day, a quiet woman named Mrs. Langley came with a single white rose in her hands. She loved roses, the widow whispered, tears in her voice. She said they smelled like her mother's perfume. Elena took her hands and led her to the bitter patch. They stood together in silence. "Let's plant it here," Elena said. Mrs. Langley hesitated. "But this is where—" "Yes," Elena nodded. "This is the place where things begin again." Together, they placed the rose in the earth. It stood alone, but proud. Like healing itself. Matteo had always been quiet, but after the gathering, he began to show interest in more than books. He watched his grandmother closely, how she tended the soil, how she pruned gently, how she chose where each seed belonged. "I think I want to be a gardener," he said one morning as they trimmed the lavender. Elena looked at him with pride. "You already are, my love. You've just now remembered." He began designing a section of the garden just for children, a place where they could dig, discover worms, plant whatever they wanted. He called it the Curious Corner. "Sometimes we don't need to grow straight," he said to his siblings. "Sometimes we just need room to explore." Lily, full of sunshine and spark, had started humming a tune she made up while skipping through the rows of marigolds. One day, she sang it aloud while dancing under the cherry tree. "You should write it down," Rosa said. "I don't know how," Lily giggled. Rosa took out a notebook and began writing the words. "Greater than where flowers grow and stories bloom. And winds are soft and sweet. A golden grandmother lives here still. With love beneath her feet." That song, simple, joyful, began to spread through the village. Children sang it while playing. Mothers hummed it while cooking. Even the postman whistled it on his route. It became the song of the garden. The song of hope. One evening, just before dusk, Elena called all the children to the garden gate. In her hand was a small, glimmering pouch. "This," she said, holding it up, "is a golden seed." The children gasped. "What kind of flower does it grow?" Lily asked. "It doesn't grow a flower," Elena said. "It grows a legacy." She knelt and handed the pouch to Rosa. "You planted something in the hardest soil. You faced what scared you. And now, I want you to plant this, not for me, but for those who will come after us." Rosa held the seed gently. "What will it become?" "A tree," Elena whispered. "One that grows slowly. One that offers shade to those who need rest, and fruit to those who are hungry for more than food." Rosa looked up. "Like your garden." "No," Elena smiled. "Like your garden." They planted the golden seed in the center of the garden. Around it, the villagers gathered in silence. Together, they laid down their hopes, their hurts, their memories, and their dreams. And the garden held it all. The summer waned slowly, like a candle burning low and steady. The skies turned golden earlier in the evenings. Apples ripened on the trees. The garden was now more than a collection of flowers, it was a living storybook. People called it the Heart Garden. And at the center of it all, near the golden seed planted by Rosa, something was changing. Not the soil, not the plants, but Elena. It began subtly. A moment of stillness where once there was energy. A breath that came slower. A gaze that drifted too long into the hills. Rosa noticed it first. "Grandma, are you tired?" Elena smiled softly. "A little, but it's the good kind of tired. The kind that comes after a harvest." Matteo watched her closely, remembering the stories she used to tell at bedtime, how the moon rises a little slower when it's ready to rest. He said nothing, but he helped her with the heavier garden work. Lily made her tea without being asked and started sleeping closer to Elena at night, like a kitten guarding a flame. The family knew. Though Elena never said it out loud, they all felt it. The wind was changing. Elena began writing in a little green journal. She called it, The Gardener's Book of Secrets. She wrote down not just planting tips, but pieces of her soul. Always speak gently to wilting things. Never rush a bud to bloom. It will open when the sun is kind enough. If you feel lost, sit in the dirt. It will remind you of your roots. One day she handed the journal to Rosa. You are the next gardener, she said, her voice like soft moss. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. But I don't know enough yet. Elena held her face with weathered hands. Love is enough. The rest, the garden will teach you. Late in September, Rosa woke before dawn. She went into the garden and found something astonishing. In the bitter patch, where once nothing had grown, there now stood a golden tree sapling. Its stem shimmered faintly in the moonlight. Its leaves glowed as if they carried the light of 1,000 dawns. Rosa ran to wake the others. When Elena came and saw it, tears welled in her eyes. It's ready, she whispered. What is it? Lily asked. It's a memory tree, Elena said. It carries all we planted here, not just seeds, but stories. Matteo placed his hand on the trunk. It's warm. Because it lives on love, Elena said. And love never dies. That evening, the village returned one more time. They brought candles, music, homemade bread, and quiet reverence. No one asked questions. No one used sad words. But everyone felt it. The golden grandmother was preparing to say goodbye. Elena sat in her favorite chair beneath the cherry tree, now losing its leaves. One by one, people came and knelt beside her. Some offered stories. Others offered thanks. Some simply held her hand. Rosa, Matteo, and Lily sat at her feet. Before the night ended, Elena looked at them all and said, I am not leaving you. I am becoming part of everything I've planted. She pointed to the garden, glowing by lantern light. Every flower is a word I never said. Every tree is a lesson I hoped you'd learn. Every breeze carries my laughter. And this garden is your home now. And then she added softly, promise me you'll keep planting. They all whispered it together. We promise. The summer waned slowly, like a candle burning low and steady. The skies turned golden earlier in the evenings. Apples ripened on the trees. The garden was now more than a collection of flowers, it was a living storybook. People called it the Heart Garden. And at the center of it all, near the golden seed planted by Rosa, something was changing. Not the soil, not the plants, but Elena. It began subtly. A moment of stillness where once there was energy. A breath that came slower. A gaze that drifted too long into the hills. Rosa noticed it first. Grandma, are you tired? Elena smiled softly. A little, but it's the good kind of tired. The kind that comes after a harvest. Matteo watched her closely, remembering the stories she used to tell at bedtime, how the moon rises a little slower when it's ready to rest. He said nothing, but he helped her with the heavier garden work. Lily made her tea without being asked and started sleeping closer to Elena at night, like a kitten guarding a flame. The family knew. Though Elena never said it out loud, they all felt it. The wind was changing. Elena began writing in a little green journal. She called it, The Gardener's Book of Secrets. She wrote down not just planting tips, but pieces of her soul. Always speak gently to wilting things. Never rush a bud to bloom. It will open when the sun is kind enough. If you feel lost, sit in the dirt. It will remind you of your roots. One day she handed the journal to Rosa. You are the next gardener, she said, her voice like soft moss. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. But I don't know enough yet. Elena held her face with weathered hands. Love is enough. The rest, the garden will teach you. Late in September, Rosa woke before dawn. She went into the garden and found something astonishing. In the bitter patch, where once nothing had grown, there now stood a golden tree sapling. Its stem shimmered faintly in the moonlight. Its leaves glowed as if they carried the light of 1,000 dawns. Rosa ran to wake the others. When Elena came and saw it, tears welled in her eyes. It's ready, she whispered. What is it? Lily asked. It's a memory tree, Elena said. It carries all we planted here, not just seeds, but stories. Matteo placed his hand on the trunk. It's warm. Because it lives on love, Elena said. And love never dies. That evening, the village returned one more time. They brought candles, music, homemade bread, and quiet reverence. No one asked questions. No one used sad words. But everyone felt it. The golden grandmother was preparing to say goodbye. Elena sat in her favorite chair beneath the cherry tree, now losing its leaves. One by one, people came and knelt beside her. Some offered stories. Others offered thanks. Some simply held her hand. Rosa, Matteo, and Lily sat at her feet. Before the night ended, Elena looked at them all and said, "I am not leaving you. I am becoming part of everything I've planted." She pointed to the garden, glowing by lantern light. "Every flower is a word I never said. Every tree is a lesson I hoped you'd learn. Every breeze carries my laughter. And this garden is your home now." And then she added softly, "Promise me you'll keep planting." They all whispered it together. "We promise." Years passed. The seasons danced through the heart garden, painting it with spring's first blush, summer's full bloom, autumn's golden sigh, and winter's quiet rest. But no matter the season, the golden tree at the garden's center stood tall and unwavering, its roots deep, its leaves like little lanterns of light. It was no longer just a sapling. It had become a magnificent presence. People still came to sit beneath it, placing their hands on its trunk to feel the gentle hum, Elena's hum, Rosa believed. Rosa, now a young woman, wore her grandmother's gardening apron with pride. Her hair, long and dark, sometimes caught the sunlight in a way that made Matteo say, "You look just like Grandma today." Lily had grown into a bright and confident girl with dreams of becoming a songwriter. She often played her guitar beneath the golden tree, her lyrics full of memory, hope, and laughter. Matteo had become an apprentice at the village's first community greenhouse. He was building an outdoor classroom for children to learn how to grow their own food and feelings. They were all gardeners now. Not because of how much they knew, but because of how deeply they loved. The little green journal had grown thin with age, but Rosa had added her own pages. People from all over the world sent letters to Elena's garden, asking for guidance, sharing their gratitude, or sending back photos of gardens they had grown after receiving one of the hope packets. A woman from Kenya wrote, "Greater than, your seeds grew even in the driest soil. They reminded me that love can bloom anywhere." A boy from Sweden sent a photo of his first sunflower with the note, "Greater than, I planted this for my mom who passed away." It made me smile again. Each story, each flower, was part of Elena's legacy. She had become more than a person. She had become a movement of love. One chilly spring morning, Rosa stood alone by the golden tree. She held something small in her hands, a single golden seed. It was the last one from Elena's pouch. She knelt and gently pressed it into the soil beside the tree. "This one's for tomorrow," she whispered. As she stood, a soft breeze stirred the leaves. And in that moment, Rosa felt her grandmother beside her, warm, gentle, and everlasting. "You did it, Grandma," Rosa said aloud. "You grew a world." And in the whisper of the wind, she heard the reply. "So will you." As the sun rose over Thistleberry Lane, its rays kissed every flower, every leaf, every heart. Children played in the curious corner. Elders sipped tea under the cherry tree. A new sign had been added near the entrance. "Greater than cherry blossom, the garden never ends, cherry blossom. Planted by one, tended by many, growing forever." And at the center, the golden tree stood strong, its branches reaching up like open arms. Because once a golden grandmother planted love in the world, it never stopped blooming. Moral lesson: love is the seed that never dies. When we plant kindness, patience, and courage in the hearts of others, even during our own darkest seasons, we create gardens that grow forever. Legacy isn't measured in time, but in how deeply we've helped others bloom. For more motivation stories, please like and subscribe this channel. Thanks.